My fiancée canceled our wedding 2 days before the ceremony because her ex came back for a second chance. She said he was her soulmate, and I should understand. I understood perfectly. 7 months later, she showed up at my door, begging for another chance. But my new girlfriend answered and asked if she could help her. All right, Reddit. Buckle up because this story is about the time my fiancé decided to ghost me 2 days before our wedding for her ex. Yeah, you read that right. 2 days. Not 2 weeks. Not 2 months. 48 hours before I was supposed to be standing at an altar in a rented suit, watching this woman walk down the aisle. I'm Jake, 30 years old, and I work as an operations manager for a logistics company here in Phoenix. Nothing flashy, but it's solid work with decent benefits, and I've been climbing the ladder steadily for the past 5 years. Own my own place, drive a 2019 Toyota Tacoma, and generally have my life together in a way that apparently made me the perfect safety net. I'd been with my ex-fiancée Laura for 3 years. Met her at a charity 5K that my company sponsored back in 2020. She was a kindergarten teacher at a public school, genuinely cared about her kids, and seemed like the real deal. We moved in together after a year and a half. She had roommate drama, and I had a 2-bedroom place, so it made sense. Looking back, I probably rushed it, but she made it seem like the natural next step. Started talking about marriage 6 months after that. So in January of this year, I proposed. Did the whole thing at this botanical garden she loved, got down on one knee, had a photographer hidden to capture the moment. The ring was a half-carat solitaire on a white gold band. Cost me $4,000 that I'd been saving for 6 months. She said yes immediately. Started planning the wedding the next day. We set the date for October 12th, giving us 9 months to plan. She wanted a traditional ceremony at this historic venue downtown, reception at a nearby hotel. The whole works. I just wanted her to be happy, so I went along with it. The venue was this renovated mission-style building from the 1920s. Place cost $3,000 just for the rental fee. Laura fell in love with it immediately and promised it would be worth it. Wedding planning revealed who people really are under pressure. Laura got increasingly stressed about details that seemed meaningless to me, while I just wanted to write checks and be told where to show up. She'd spend hours debating centerpiece options like it was life or death. I kept my mouth shut because this was important to her. My family was thrilled about the engagement. My mom started texting Laura daily about wedding plans. My dad offered to help pay for the rehearsal dinner. They loved her, thought she was the one who was finally going to settle me down. Laura's parents were equally excited. Her dad, Frank, owned a small accounting firm and had always been supportive. Her mom, Patricia, worked part-time at a boutique and had basically adopted me as her future son-in-law. They offered to contribute to the wedding costs, even though they didn't have much money. The guest list hit 180 people by June. Invitations went out in July. By August, we had 150 confirmed RSVPs. Deposits paid on everything: venue, catering, photographer, DJ, flowers. I'd invested probably $12,000 total, and Laura had put in another 8. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs in September. Laura started acting distant, would come home from work and go straight to her phone. Said she was stressed about wedding planning on top of the new school year. I believed her because it made sense. Then, in late September, she started mentioning Nathan, her high school sweetheart who'd moved to Seattle 7 years ago and apparently just moved back to Phoenix. They'd dated for years before he left for college. She told me they'd stayed friendly on social media, but hadn't actually seen each other in years. At first it was casual, just mentioned running into him at Target one weekend. Said he looked good, was working for some renewable energy company. I didn't think much of it, but then it became a pattern. Nathan thinks this. Nathan says that. Always Nathan. I'm not generally the jealous type, but something felt off. When I asked her directly, she got defensive, said I was being insecure and that she was allowed to have friends, so I backed off. By early October, she was texting constantly, phone always face down on the table, taking calls in the other room, said it was wedding vendor stuff or schoolwork, but the way she'd tense up when I walked in told a different story. October 10th, the day my life imploded. 2 days before the wedding, 48 hours before I was supposed to be marrying this woman in front of everyone we knew. My parents were already in town. My sister had taken the week off work. Out-of-town guests were arriving throughout the day. I'd taken the whole week off work to handle last-minute wedding stuff. Spent the morning confirming vendor times, checking in with the coordinator, picking up my suit. Everything was tracking perfectly. Came home around 2 p.m. to find Laura sitting on the couch with her phone in her lap, crying. Not the stressed crying I'd seen during wedding planning, but the deep, soul-crushing kind of crying that means something fundamental just broke. My first thought was that someone died. Her parents, her grandparents, someone from school. I immediately went into emergency mode, sitting down next to her and asking what happened. She wouldn't look at me, just kept staring at her phone while tears ran down her face. Then she said the words that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Nathan told me he still loves me. He said leaving me was the biggest mistake of his life and he wants me back. I just sat there processing that sentence like it was in a foreign language. Nathan, the ex-boyfriend she'd been mentioning for weeks. The guy she claimed was just an old friend. He'd confessed his feelings, and she was crying on our couch 2 days before our wedding, instead of laughing in his face and blocking his number. I waited for her to follow up with, and I told him to get lost, or, isn't that crazy? But she just kept crying. So I asked the question I already knew the answer to. What did you say to him? She finally looked at me, eyes all red and puffy, mascara running down her cheeks, and she said, with complete sincerity, I think I still have feelings for him too. I think he might be my soulmate and I just settled for you because he wasn't available. Soulmate. She actually used that word. And settled. Like our 3 years together, the apartment we shared, the wedding we'd planned, the life we'd built, all of it was just me being the available option while she waited for her real soulmate to come back. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't beg. I just stood up, walked to the bedroom, and started packing my stuff. She followed me asking what I was doing, saying we needed to talk about this. I told her there was nothing to talk about. She'd made her choice. Jake, please, I'm so confused right now. I need time to figure out what I want. You already know what you want. You want Nathan. So go get Nathan. But the wedding is canceled. I'll handle it. I packed 2 suitcases with essentials, grabbed my laptop and important documents, and walked out to my Tacoma. She stood in the doorway crying, saying I should understand that this was about following her heart, that real love is worth fighting for, that Nathan and her had unfinished business that needed resolution. I looked at her one last time and said, I hope he's worth it. Then I drove to my parents' hotel. The conversation with my parents was brutal. Mom started crying. Dad got that look like he wanted to punch something. My sister just stared at me in shock. I showed them the text Laura sent. The text said, I'm so sorry, Jake. I never meant to hurt you. Nathan and I are going to take some time to figure things out. I need to follow my heart even though I know this timing is terrible. I hope someday you can understand. Follow her heart. Like I was just collateral damage in her romantic awakening. Like the 3 years we'd spent building a life together meant nothing because her high school boyfriend showed back up with some California redemption story. I spent that night in my parents' hotel room on a cot. Couldn't sleep. By midnight, my phone was blowing up with messages from confused relatives and friends. The next morning, I started canceling everything. Called the wedding coordinator at 7 a.m. She'd never seen a cancellation this close to the event. Most vendors wouldn't refund anything this late. The venue kept the $3,000 deposit. Catering kept $2,000. Photographer kept $1,000. Florist kept $800. DJ kept $500. I lost roughly $8,000 in non-refundable deposits, plus the $4,000 ring. I had to contact every single person on the guest list personally. Some had already traveled to Phoenix. All these people who'd rearranged their lives for a wedding that wasn't happening. Laura's parents called me that afternoon. Frank was livid, said he was ashamed of his daughter and that I deserved better. Patricia was crying, apologizing profusely. I told them it wasn't their fault and that I appreciated them. Meanwhile, Laura and Nathan were apparently having their soulmate reunion. Mutual friends sent screenshots of them posting photos together that same week. Her at some hiking trail with Nathan, looking blissfully happy. The audacity of posting that less than a week after canceling our wedding was staggering. Just straight up broadcasting her happiness with the guy she'd left me for. I moved back into the apartment since it was mine. Laura cleared out her stuff within 3 days. Left the ring on the kitchen counter with a note that said, I'm sorry it ended like this. I hope you find someone who makes you truly happy. I threw the ring in my closet and tried to figure out what came next. Took 2 weeks off work to process everything. My boss was understanding. His daughter had gone through something similar, and he knew I needed time. Those 2 weeks were dark. I'm not going to pretend I handled it perfectly. I barely left the apartment except for grocery runs. Ignored most calls and texts. Spent a lot of time just sitting on the couch where Laura had told me about Nathan, replaying the whole relationship in my head, trying to figure out where I'd missed the signs. Friends tried to help. My buddy Rich would show up with takeout and force me to eat. My sister drove down twice just to check on me. My parents called daily. Everyone had advice. Hit the gym, focus on work, get back out there. She wasn't worth it anyway. All true, but none of it made the humiliation feel any better. The worst part wasn't even the heartbreak. It was the embarrassment. Everyone knew I'd been dumped 2 days before my wedding. At the grocery store, at the gym, eventually at work. Phoenix isn't that big and people talk. I could see it in their faces. The pity, the curiosity, the judgment about what kind of guy gets left at the altar. Rebuilding. When you realize being alone is better than being someone's backup plan. After the initial shock wore off, something shifted in me. I got angry. Not destructive, screaming angry. Cold, calculating angry. The kind of angry that makes you focus and improve yourself just to prove a point to exactly nobody. I threw myself into work with intensity I didn't know I had. Started arriving early, staying late, volunteering for projects nobody else wanted. My boss noticed and started giving me more responsibility. By December, I'd been promoted to senior operations manager with a 20% raise. The promotion wasn't charity either. I'd legitimately earned it by streamlining 3 major logistics processes that saved the company money and improved delivery times, created new vendor relationships that cut costs, implemented a tracking system that reduced errors, became the guy management called when they needed something done right, hit the gym 5 days a week, not because I was trying to make Laura jealous, but because I needed something to channel this energy into, lost 15 pounds of relationship weight and put on actual muscle, started sleeping better, eating better, feeling better physically, even when emotionally I was still processing everything. The gym became my therapy. There's something clarifying about physical exhaustion that mental exhaustion doesn't provide. Every rep, every set, every mile on the treadmill was me proving to myself that I could commit to something and follow through, that I wasn't the quitter in this situation. Started running again, something I'd stopped doing when Laura moved in because she'd complained about how early I woke up. Sold the engagement ring to a jewelry buyer for $2,000. Half what I paid, but I didn't care. Used that money to completely redo my apartment. New furniture, new TV, new everything. Erased every trace of Laura from the place until it felt like mine again. The apartment transformation was methodical. Got rid of the floral couch Laura had insisted on and replaced it with a leather sectional. Bought a real dining table instead of the cheap one we'd compromised on. Mounted a 65-inch TV and got proper surround sound. Made the place feel like an adult man's space instead of a compromise between 2 people with different tastes. Painted the bedroom a color I actually liked. Bought new sheets that weren't the thread count Laura demanded. Reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the relationship. Started doing guy stuff again. Poker nights, basketball leagues, weekend trips to the desert. Remembered what it felt like to just exist without constantly checking in or explaining where I was or managing someone else's emotions. My buddy Rich was particularly instrumental in pulling me back into normal life. He'd text me every Friday asking what the plan was. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Just show up at my place with tickets to a Suns game or reservations at a steakhouse. Forced me to remember that life existed outside of my failed relationship. He'd been my best man, had his suit rented and everything, so he'd been there for the whole disaster and refused to let me spiral. By January, I was in the best shape of my life, making more money than ever, living in a place I actually liked, and genuinely enjoying being single. Wasn't even thinking about dating, just focused on myself and my goals and building the kind of life I wanted without compromise. February, when the universe has a sense of humor. Met someone completely by accident. Wasn't looking, wasn't trying, just living my life and it happened. Her name's Rachel, and I met her at a rock climbing gym that Rich dragged me to on a Saturday morning. She was working as an instructor there, teaching a beginner's class. Watched her patiently explain techniques to a group of nervous middle-aged people trying something new, and something about her energy just clicked. Rachel was nothing like Laura. Tall, athletic build, blonde hair always in a practical ponytail, covered in climbing chalk. She worked as a physical therapist during the week and taught climbing on weekends because she loved it. Had this straightforward, no-nonsense personality that I found refreshing after years of Laura's emotional dramatics. Direct communication, clear boundaries, none of the passive-aggressive hints that had defined my previous relationship. After the class ended, Rich, being Rich, walked right up to her and asked if she'd teach us too. She laughed and said we looked capable enough to figure it out, but gave us some tips anyway. We ended up talking for 20 minutes about climbing techniques, and I asked if she wanted to grab coffee sometime. She said yes without any games or playing hard to get. Gave me her number, suggested a coffee place she liked, and said she was free Sunday afternoon. That was it. No analyzing, no second guessing, just 2 adults making plans to hang out. Our first date was easy. None of that awkward first date energy where you're both performing. Just sat at this local coffee shop talking about work, hobbies, what we did for fun. She asked about my previous relationship, and I gave her the short version. Engaged, she left me 2 days before the wedding for her ex. I've moved on. Rachel's response was perfect. She didn't overreact or get all sympathetic and pitying. Just said, "That's rough, but sounds like you dodged something worse down the line," and moved on to other topics. Treated it like a thing that happened, not my defining characteristic. didn't press for details or treat me like damaged goods that needed fixing. We started hanging out regularly. She'd come over after work some nights, and we'd cook dinner together. I'd go to the climbing gym on weekends, and she'd push me to try harder routes. We'd go hiking in the mountains, or catch movies, or just exist in the same space without needing constant entertainment. No drama about whether we were texting enough or seeing each other the right amount. The relationship developed naturally without any pressure or timeline. We both had our own lives, our own friends, our own routines. Sometimes we'd go 3 days without seeing each other, and it was fine. No drama about why I hadn't texted enough, or whether we were spending enough quality time together. No accusations about not making her a priority, or questions about where this was going. What I loved about Rachel was her independence. She had a career she was passionate about, helping people recover from injuries and surgeries. Had hobbies that fulfilled her: climbing, hiking, trail running on weekends. Friends she'd maintained for years, a tight group from grad school who did monthly dinners. Didn't need me to complete her or make her whole. Just wanted someone to share experiences with and build something together at a pace that made sense. By March, we were officially together. Not because we had some relationship-defining talk, but because it just became obvious that we were exclusive and serious about each other. She had a drawer at my place. I had stuff at hers. We made plans assuming we'd be together. Simple, straightforward, no games. I told my parents about Rachel in April. They were cautious at first, obviously not wanting me to rush into anything after what happened with Laura. But when they met her at a family dinner, I could see the relief on their faces. This was a woman who had her life together, who treated me like an equal partner, who wasn't going to implode our relationship for some dramatic reason. Mom pulled me aside after dinner and said, "This one's different," with this knowing look. Said she could tell Rachel actually valued me, that it wasn't one-sided. Dad shook Rachel's hand and told her she was welcome anytime, gave her his cell number, and told her to call if she ever needed anything. My sister texted me later that night saying she approved and to not screw this one up. 7 months after the canceled wedding, I'm living my best life. Great job, great girlfriend, great apartment, great physical health. Genuinely happy in a way I hadn't been in years. Not thinking about Laura at all, except occasionally when something reminded me of how much better off I was now. Then, on a Saturday afternoon in May, my doorbell rings. Rachel and I had spent the morning hiking Camelback Mountain, one of those perfect Arizona spring days where it's not too hot yet, and the desert is actually enjoyable. Came back to my place to shower and were planning to meal prep for the week and watch a movie. She was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for stir-fry. I was in the living room setting up the TV. Normal domestic bliss. The kind of comfortable Saturday that you take for granted until something interrupts it. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I figured it was a delivery or something. Maybe the new climbing shoes Rachel had ordered. Opened the door, and there stood Laura. She looked rough. Not like falling apart rough, but definitely not the put-together kindergarten teacher I remembered. Hair a mess. No makeup. Wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie on an 85-degree day. Eyes red like she'd been crying recently. Standing on my doorstep with this desperate expression that I recognized from the day she told me about Nathan. That same pleading look, like she was about to ask for something she knew she had no right to request. Before I could say anything, she started talking. Fast, frantic, word vomit talking. "Jake, I know I have no right to be here, but I need to talk to you. Nathan and I broke up, and I realize now that I made the biggest mistake of my life. You were the one. You were always the one. And I threw it away for some fantasy that wasn't real. He wasn't who I remembered. We had nothing in common anymore. It was a disaster, and I should have known that you were my person. Can we please talk? I miss you. I miss us. I know I don't deserve another chance, but..." She stopped mid-sentence because Rachel had walked up behind me, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. Must have heard voices at the door and came to see what was going on. "Hey, babe, do you want garlic in the..." Rachel stopped when she saw Laura. Looked at her, looked at me, and in that moment, I could see her processing exactly who this was. The ex-fiancée. The woman who'd canceled our wedding 2 days before. The reason I'd been single when we met. Rachel's not dumb. I'd told her about Laura and the wedding cancellation during one of our early dates. She knew the story, knew the timeline, knew why I'd been single when we met. And here was the ex-fiancé showing up unannounced at my door with clearly romantic intentions, looking like she'd driven here directly from an emotional breakdown. To Rachel's credit, she didn't panic or get jealous or insecure, just stood there calmly waiting to see how I'd handle it, confident in herself and in our relationship, not threatened by some woman from my past showing up desperate and crying. That quiet confidence was one of the things I loved about her. Laura looked between us, the realization hitting her that I'd moved on, that I wasn't sitting around pining for her or waiting for her to come back, that I'd built an entire new life without her in it. "Who is this?" Laura asked, her voice cracking. Before I could answer, Rachel stepped forward and extended her hand with this perfectly pleasant smile. Hi, I'm Rachel, Jake's girlfriend. Can I help you with something? The tone was polite but firm. Not aggressive, just matter of fact. This is who I am. This is my relationship with this man. State your business. Laura's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, hurt, anger, jealousy, and finally something like resignation. She looked at me with these pleading eyes like I was supposed to send Rachel away and listen to her declaration of regret. I didn't. Laura, this isn't a good time. You should probably go. Jake, please, just give me 5 minutes. I came all this way. You canceled our wedding 2 days before the ceremony for your soulmate. You made your choice. I've made mine. But I made a mistake. Nathan wasn't what I thought he'd be. We had nothing to talk about. He was boring and pretentious, and I realized too late that you were the one who actually understood me. Rachel interrupted her. Not rudely, just stating facts. It sounds like you're having some regrets about your decisions. That must be difficult. But Jake's moved on, and we're kind of in the middle of something, so maybe you should process this somewhere else. The way Rachel handled it was perfect. Calm, direct, not threatened. Just acknowledged Laura's feelings, while making it crystal clear that this conversation was over and she wasn't going anywhere. Laura looked at me one more time. I could see her trying to figure out if there was any angle, any approach, any words that would make me reconsider. Finding none. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for everything. I hope things work out for you, Laura. I really do. But we're done. We've been done since October. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and walked back to her car. Some beat-up Honda Civic I didn't recognize. Guess she'd traded in the Mazda she used to drive. Watched her get in and drive away, then closed the door. Turned around to find Rachel leaning against the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, looking amused. So that was her. That was her. The soulmate thing didn't work out, huh? Apparently not. You okay? I thought about it for a second, genuinely examined how I felt, and realized I felt absolutely nothing for Laura. No anger, no sadness, no lingering feelings. Just complete indifference to someone who used to be my whole world. Yeah, I'm good. Great, actually. Rachel smiled and went back to the kitchen. Called out, garlic or no garlic? Like we hadn't just had my ex-fiancé show up begging for another chance. I followed her and wrapped my arms around her from behind while she was chopping vegetables. Thank you for that. For what? For being you. For handling that perfectly. For not making it weird. She turned around in my arms and kissed me. I'm not threatened by someone who gave up something good for something shiny. That's her loss. And my gain. We made stir-fry, watched our movie, and never mentioned Laura again that night. Because she didn't matter. She was a chapter that ended badly, but led to something better. Laura tried texting me a few times over the following weeks. Long messages about how sorry she was, how she'd been confused and made terrible choices, how she hoped we could at least be friends someday. I never responded. Not out of spite or revenge, just because there was nothing to say. You don't cancel a wedding 2 days beforehand for your soulmate, and then get to claim you made a confused mistake when it doesn't work out. You made an active choice to blow up someone's life for your own selfish reasons. Those have consequences. My parents asked about Laura's visit when I told them what happened. They were disgusted, but not surprised. Said people like that usually come crawling back when reality doesn't match their fantasy. Asked if I was tempted at all to hear her out. I told them honestly that I wasn't. What would I have heard? That she realized being with Nathan wasn't as exciting as she remembered from high school? That the guy she left me for 2 days before our wedding turned out to be human like everyone else? That she wanted to come back to the safe, reliable guy who had his life together after her adventure failed? No thanks. I'm nobody's backup plan. I'm nobody's safety net. I'm nobody's second choice when the first one doesn't work out. Rachel and I kept building our relationship at our own pace. No pressure, no timeline, no forcing things that weren't ready. We moved in together in August, almost a year after Laura had moved out. Made sense practically and emotionally. We were spending most nights together anyway. Splitting rent would save us both money, and we genuinely wanted to share a space. The difference between moving in with Rachel versus moving in with Laura was night and day. With Laura, I'd felt like I was solving her problem. With Rachel, I felt like we were building something together. We picked out furniture together, compromised on decoration, created a space that reflected both of us. Work continued going well. Got another promotion in September, this time to Director of Operations. More responsibility, more money, more respect from my colleagues. The raise put me in a financial position I'd never imagined at 30 years old. My boss, Steve, pulled me into his office when he offered the promotion. Said he'd been watching me over the past year and was impressed by how I'd handled adversity. That most guys would have fallen apart or gotten bitter after what happened with Laura. but I'd channeled it into productivity and growth. Said that's the kind of character they wanted in leadership. Life just kept getting better. Rachel and I took a trip to Colorado for her birthday. Spent a week hiking and climbing and exploring. She told me on that trip that she loved me, and I said it back without hesitation. Meant it too. This was the real thing, not the compromise I'd convinced myself was love with Laura. December. Full circle. 1 year after the worst December of my life turned into the best. Rachel and I hosted Christmas dinner at our apartment for both our families. My parents, her parents, siblings, the whole crew. Cooked a meal together, exchanged gifts, sat around talking and laughing. My mom pulled me aside while we were cleaning up and told me how happy I looked. Said she could see it in my eyes, in the way I carried myself, in how I interacted with Rachel. Told me she was proud of how I'd handled everything and rebuilt my life. That night after everyone left, Rachel and I sat on the couch with leftover pie watching Christmas. She fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, and I just sat there thinking about how different my life was from a year ago. A year ago, I was sleeping on a cot in my parents' hotel room, humiliated and heartbroken, and convinced I'd never trust anyone again. Now I was sitting in my own place with a woman who chose me every single day, not because I was convenient or available, but because she genuinely wanted to build a life with me. I never heard from Laura again after May. Mutual friends said she'd moved to Tucson for a teaching job, trying to start fresh somewhere new. Nathan apparently moved back to Seattle. Neither of them are my problem or my concern. Sometimes people ask if I'm glad Laura canceled the wedding, if I think it was a blessing in disguise or fate intervening or whatever. Honestly, I don't think about it like that. It wasn't a blessing, it was a betrayal that hurt badly at the time. But it did show me what I deserved, and what I wasn't willing to settle for anymore. If Laura and I had gotten married, I probably would have spent years trying to make someone happy who was fundamentally unsatisfied with life, bending myself into shapes to accommodate her indecision and her constant searching for something better, eventually either divorcing or living in quiet resentment. Instead, I got to build a life with someone who knows what she wants and chose me deliberately, someone who handles conflict with maturity instead of drama, someone who sees me as a partner, not a placeholder. When Laura showed up that day, I didn't need to be cruel or rub my happiness in her face. Rachel's presence did that without either of us trying. The look on Laura's face when she realized I'd moved on completely, that I wasn't heartbroken or waiting or available, was more satisfying than any comeback I could have planned. It's been over a year now since the wedding that never happened. Rachel and I are talking about buying a house together next year. Nothing rushed, just planning for our future the way adults do. She's met my extended family at Thanksgiving and charmed everyone. I've become close with her parents and her younger brother. Work's still going great. Got another raise in November. My team respects me. My boss trusts me. I'm on track for VP within 5 years if I want it. Finally feel like I'm hitting my stride professionally. Physically, I'm in the best shape of my life. Still hitting the gym 5 days a week, doing regular climbing sessions with Rachel, hiking every weekend the weather permits. Actually enjoy the process now, instead of using it as therapy. The apartment Rachel and I share feels like home in a way my place never did with Laura. We've got photos on the walls, inside jokes, routines that work for both of us. She respects my space, and I respect hers. We can spend entire weekends together without getting on each other's nerves. My family loves her. My friends love her. More importantly, I love her. Not the desperate, anxious love I had with Laura, where I was always trying to be enough. The secure, steady love where I know I'm chosen and valued for exactly who I am. Sometimes guys who hear my story ask if I'm worried about Rachel doing the same thing Laura did, if I'm scared to commit again or waiting for the other shoe to drop. Honest answer? No, because Rachel's actions match her words every single day. She doesn't have one foot out the door. She's not keeping her options open. She's all in on us, and it shows. Last week we were grocery shopping and ran into one of Laura's old co-workers. The woman recognized me, got this awkward look on her face, clearly didn't know what to say. Rachel handled it smoothly, introducing herself and making small talk while I grabbed what we needed. Later in the car, she mentioned it casually. That was weird. She definitely knew who you were. Probably heard about the wedding thing. Does it bother you? Running into people who know? I thought about it. A year ago, it would've. Now? Nah. Let them think whatever they want. I'm good. And I meant it. That's the thing about actually moving on. You stop caring what people think or what your ex is doing or whether anyone feels sorry for you. You're too busy living your actual life to worry about the story people tell about your past. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.